Okay, so as usual, I have duplicated my directory. So I think the last one that we did was Unit 7 or Chapter 9, depending on which naming convention you're using. I've kind of switched to the unit conventions, which I probably should not have done because you guys are using chapters. But anyway, this is Unit 10, and so I've got this here. I've duplicated, and I'll go ahead and get this stuff opened up in code as well. There's the Unit 10. Yeah, let me just get this server going here. Okay, cool. And I'm going to try putting this into Firefox instead. Hopefully it'll be a little bit easier for me to grab the screen and whittle around like that. Okay, cool. So this is what we've got in terms of the browser, and we'll take a look at the code real quick. So our first design was this, right? We took this down, just say, okay, we're going to do mobile first, which is absolutely the way you should do it. Think about mobile designs before thinking about desktop designs and layouts and so on. A single column of content should be your default, right? It's not only the easiest to code, but it just makes most sense, I think. And then this is where we tuck this navigation down towards the bottom here to get it out of the way. And then when we get to 600 pixels or wider, things change. The navigation gets pushed back upstairs here, and it runs in a row instead of a column. We changed the borders a little bit, and the rest of it, I think we left pretty much the same. I think that was it. So here's what it looks like with the code. And this is what the media query looked like. So at media, screen, and min width 600 pixels, there are a host of different filters, conditions that you can put in here. You can do a max width. You can do, by the way, you don't have to do add media screen. You can do add media print if you want to create a style sheet for a print document. We don't do that so much anymore because browsers have gotten really good at creating print documents for the most part. But you can do that. And there used to be an add media handheld as well, although that, I believe, has been deprecated now because screen is meant to cover all sorts of screens. So here's where we push the navigation back upstairs. We had used Flexbox. This is why we put the body display flex on here and flex direction column, and then push the nav and the footer down by using order 1, and then we pulled them back upstairs again by doing order 0. Remember, 0 is the default ordering. So think about 0 when you're moving things around. You can do -1 if you want to take an element and push it way upstairs before everybody, or add 1, +1, in order to push it downstairs, and then 0 to get it back into its default position. And then the nav, here's where we got it to do flex direction row, so it's a row instead of a column. And then just various things we did to this. Nav A, we had to do a flex 1 and text align center. And I was kind of bumbled around a little bit playing around with, I can't remember what else played around with. Anyway, this wound up being the thing that worked in order to get each of those A's centered within here and have each of them have enough width for the text and so on. Flex 1 is a shorthand for flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. We'll make use of those, or at least flex grow and flex basis today. And then just changing the way the navigation looked, the anchors. So what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to add a couple of more media queries. So we've got this one for phone, just to keep things simple. I think I'm going to change this, just call it phone, and then we'll do one for tablet and one for desktop. That's probably the easiest way to think of it. Although really, I mean, this is really phone up here, right? So this section here, I should probably call it phone landscape or something like that, or even like tablet portrait or something like that. Just whatever makes sense to you and your team. So in a minute, we'll do another one for tablet, and then we'll do another one for desktop. But before we do that, I want to test things here a little bit more carefully. So there's a difference between doing this in a desktop browser and saying, oh yeah, the media queries are working. Oh yes, the design works at all these widths and so on. And then another thing to actually emulate devices, because devices do treat our code a little bit differently. We could wish that they didn't, but they kind of do. So if I go to developer tools here, so I'm hitting Control-Shift-I in order to bring up the developer tools. And this one, let's see, does it have, a device toolbar here. Oh yeah, here it is over here on the right. Usually, like you look in Chrome or Edge or something like that, they've got something over on their, they put it up in a column instead, the console, and then they've got it up in the upper left corner of the console. But here it's down in the row in the bottom, and they put this in the upper right. But you should see something like this: responsive design mode, or device toolbar, or whatever. And what this should do, if you tap on this, is it should give you a little bit of an emulator in here and show you what your page should actually look like on one of these devices. And so like I should be able to, oh, here it is. So drop down this list and you should be able to choose. I've been doing, what have I been doing? I've been doing let's see, iPhone 12, I think, but I've got several of them down here. I guess it's just that one. Yeah, it looks the same as this one. I'm a little surprised that things are working this well, actually. I don't think that this is actually correct. Let me open this back up in Edge. Or maybe I'll do Chrome. Let's do Chrome real quick here. As soon as you start doing this stuff, it starts to become important to do cross-browser checking. So checking multiple browsers and see how things work. So I'm just pasting in that IP. And then I'm going to do developer tools. So here's what I mean. It shows up as a column over here instead of a row. And then here is the device toolbar here. And you can toggle that. So here it is regular like, and then here it is like so. And sometimes they'll give you a little, instead of like the pointer cursor, they'll give you a round thing that you can like scroll up and down with like you would touchscreen on the phone and so on. And did we do more than I thought in this? Oh, we did, didn't we? Did we do this last time? Did we do the meta name equals viewport last time? You guys have that in your code?
No, we don't have it.
That's why everything's looking so good. Sheesh, I don't know how that wound up in there. I must have been testing things after the demo or something like that. So, okay, let's try this again. So without that line of code, which don't worry, we'll put it back in just a minute. And now, yeah, things are not looking happy now. So if I go back over to Chrome, and let's get out of here for a moment, and then get back into the console. So it's Control-Shift-I, and then this is what I was expecting to see. And this is what yours will probably look like if you do this. If you open up the console and then go to the toggle toolbar or whatever, it'll look like this. And this is what handheld devices do. They take the entire page and they squish the whole thing down, sometimes including these big, wide, stupid margins that nobody wants and that don't make any sense. Let's see if I drop down the dimensions here, and here's the iPhone 12 Pro. This is what I've been doing. And look at this. It just kind of takes the whole thing and just squeezes it way down. This has been the default for handheld devices for a long time, is what they do. And I think that this is an old default that goes back to the days when we didn't know how to use media queries, and they would just expect that the default would be that we have to crunch down the entire page and squeeze it all the way down into this screen like this, and then have people like pan around with their finger or whatever in order to see all the stuff. That's not what we want, obviously, but we still need to throw in a line of code in order to make things work. So this is what I was expecting to see, and this is what you guys will see if you do the same thing. So now it comes time to fix it. But before I do, I want to make sure that everybody has gotten to this place here where you're displaying your, it doesn't have to be through the server, but you're displaying your web page through a browser, and you've opened up the console here and you've gone to the device toolbar or the responsive view or whatever your browser calls it in there. There should be something like this. And if it doesn't have something like this that you can find, then switch to a different browser and try that instead. So is there anyone who's having trouble getting to this place or has trouble getting to where it's displaying this in like a phone-sized screen here?
Nope, all set.
Okay, do let me know if so. Otherwise, we'll keep going forward. So let's go ahead and get back to your HTML code, and let's get back in that one little line of code that we need in order to get this to actually work. And by the way, this is not just the browser doing this. This is the way it would look if we took this right now and uploaded it to a server and accessed it with our phones. This is what we would see, which is not happy. So here we go back to our code, and we're going to put in a second meta tag here. Now, most meta tags, this is not the usual configuration of a meta tag, the char set attribute. Most metas have a name and a content. Not all of them, obviously, but most of them fall into this configuration. If you do name equals and then something, and then content equals something. And you can kind of think of this as like a property and value for the property, more or less. And this one in particular, and this is where you get into the SEO stuff too, if you want to do like meta name equals keywords or meta name equals description or something like that, and then put content in for that. But right now, we're just going to do meta name equals viewport. So what is a viewport? Well, the viewport is, it's not the entire device screen. I made that mistake for years, but it's not that. The viewport is actually the live area of the browser window. So the actual content flow area of the browser where the user is actually able to see content like headings and paragraphs and so on. That's the viewport size. And that's why you can go into a place like, let's see, I think it is whatismyviewport.com, if I'm not mistaken, and it tells me what my viewport size is. But like if I go there, if you go there with your phone and go to whatismyviewport.com in like Firefox browser, and it'll tell you one thing, and then you go there in the Chrome browser or Opera browser, and it'll say something different. And if you're thinking about the viewport as being the screen size, that can be really confusing. But it's not. It's the size, it's the actual active window size of the browser itself. That's why you can get different responses on different browsers. I'll put this as a link up there as well because that's a good one to know.
That makes sense.
Okay, so we got meta name equals viewport, content equals, and this is where you just kind of have to memorize this. There are two things that should go in there, either one of which is probably enough by itself, but you put both in there in order to be safe and make sure you cover your bases with all the major, mobile browsers. So the first one is, and this one always kind of teed me off, but with
memorize? No, we don't do that here.
What's that?
Said memorize? No, we don't do that here.
Oh, well, then put it in your notes. Put it in your morgue file. So width equals device width. And it always kind of irked me that you had to tell a browser to pay attention to its own screen size. But if I save this, and like I said, this is enough by itself, at least according to Firefox. This thinks this is sufficient in order to get this actually looking the way a mobile browser should look, or a mobile page should look. Now, the other one, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete this here, is initial scale equals 1, or 1.0 as some people do it. And that also, Firefox thinks that's also enough to make this work properly for a mobile touchscreen. Notice what, the other thing that's really irked me about this, and still does actually, is this, the equals sign, inside the quotes. And this has confused so many of my students so many times, and it probably did me in the early days too. I probably did it the wrong way. I always thought they should have done something like this. And the reason why is because we're so used to seeing the equals outside the quote, right? And suddenly we're looking at one inside the quote and outside the quote. It's really confusing. But don't do it like this because it won't work. You want to do the equals. So I'm going to do both of these now. I'm going to do width equals device dash width, and then a comma, not a semicolon the way I always want to do, but a comma, and initial scale. Let's see if I can spell here. Scale equals 1. So these are the two that you use together. I'm just going to save that and go over here. Yes, that's fine. You do these two together to cover your bases and make sure that just about all mobile browsers at this point, maybe literally all of them, will be covered by one of these two.
Does a space between a comma and initial matter?
Doesn't matter. Yeah, this works. If I put a space in there, that'll also be fine. There's a third one that gets used with a fair amount of frequency, which is this. User scalable equals no. I did this one in the early days. I attached this as a third thing, but now I don't agree with that. I think well, it's not that it's bad. I think it's dangerous. I think that taking away scrolling ability from, or rather scalability from the user, I think that's a dangerous thing. Basically, if you put this in, then the user will not be able to use a two-finger spread in order to zoom in on your web page. And you guys have all been to web pages, I'm sure, on your mobile device that did not allow you to do that. And personally, I think it's kind of irritating. So I've gotten to the point for usability reasons that I just leave this off now and just go for these two. But you'll see all kinds of different configurations of those three. So do remember to use this. This right here is exam material. And it's not necessarily even going to be stated exam material. I'm going to do something in the final exam. It's going to be very much like the midterm was. It's going to be a lab test, a do-it test, right? And I'm sure I'm going to give you some kind of CSS, and then at some point I'm going to say, okay, make sure this works for mobile. And I'm not going to give you any more clues than that. I won't prevent you from looking it up in your notes, but you'll have to know what the heck I'm talking about, at least. So do remember this. Okay, enough said. Let's see. So make the image in the article scale. I'm reading through the perspectives, exercises at the end of chapter 8. Add a media query for a phone for portrait orientation. We already did this. And then we'll go ahead and add another media query here. So onto the CSS. I don't know why it bugs me to have CSS on the left. I want it on the right. Thank you. So here we did the app media screen and mid-width 600 pixels. So let's do one at 900 pixels. Remember, the breakpoints are going to be at 600, 900, and 1200. So those will be the ones that we do. And what are we going to do at 600? And what are we going to do at 900? I think that at 900, hang on a second here. Yeah, okay, so we're going to change the width of the body. We're going to create a flexbox on main, and yeah, so that's what I have planned. So we can get back out of here for the time being and just go back to kind of wiggling the viewport back and forth here now that we know that it works. So I'm going to create one at 900 pixels. We already did one at 600, and what I'm planning on doing is having two major sections of the main element next to each other. So there's this section, which is our mission and goes on down to our ticket packages, and then you can see where we kind of split them in two with this border top, and then this season speakers is the next section. So we'll put those two guys next to each other instead of vertically, so the user will have to scroll less if they've got a wider screen. Makes sense. So there's one thing I want to do first, and that is the body element. Let me see, I think this goes all the way back up to the top here, where we gave the max width to the body element.
Yep.
Margin 0, and there's the max width, 600 pixels. Let's get that guy off there. I'm just going to delete that. That's line 75-ish. So it's just going ahead and stretching the full width. That's okay. We're going to do something else, but we're going to put it inside of our media query here. So let's make another media query, and I'm going to call this one tablet. Remember, no matter what kind of naming convention makes sense to you, name it something, because otherwise people will
Mr. Bispo, you got rid of the max width for the body?
Yes. Somewhere around line 75 or so, I took that off. We have a max width 600 pixels. So here's our next media query. At media.
900 pixels or what?
Say that again?
900 pixels or what?
Yeah, 900 pixels. Screen and min width 900 px. And again, notice that this condition in here just takes the form of a CSS declaration. And let's select for the body here. And I'm going to do a width, and we've done a couple of things. We did, well, at least we did pixels, right? And we think we did ems at some point. Just know that you can also do a percentage. You could do like 85% or something like that. And then when the browser width changes, the width of that container changes as well, the width of the body element, until it gets down to underneath 900, in which case it's, you know, the 100% width and so on. There's something else that I've been playing with just lately. I haven't used it in a project yet, but I think it's kind of cool. There are units in CSS now, VW and VH, and I thought this was pertinent since we just talked about the viewport. The V stands for viewport, and W and H are width and height. So you can set the width of this to be a certain percentage of the viewport by doing the VW unit. So I could do like 85 VW and 100% of the viewport width being 100. And then I go over here and it does the same thing, right? Or at least something similar. So again, I haven't tested this out very much, but I think it's kind of a cool thing. And something I'm really curious about doing is doing, setting things based on viewport height. That sounds like it might be really interesting in terms of being able to really dynamically create a layout depending on the screen size in both dimensions. So I don't know, maybe I'll do it with, do whatever makes sense to you. Do what looks good to you. There's not a best answer to this or an only answer to this. Maybe I'll go ahead and start with just 75. Somewhere in between. I tried 85, 65. I'll go with 75 for right now. And so remember we were saying we want to get these two guys next to each other. These two, look at the HTML. So there's the main element, and then there's all the stuff that goes here from H2 down to, well, there, the bottom of the UL. And then the next one is the H1 with the figure spot. These are the two obvious sections to split this up on. But there aren't any real sections here, right? There's just a bunch of stuff that's kind of littering inside the main element. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a couple of just dividers for this. You could do sections if you wanted to, and that would actually make sense. So let's go ahead and do that. So a section is another semantic structural element, and it's a little bit more generic than the others. It doesn't really say what goes inside of here, but it does say something about the content, the document structure. We can't really get into that right now. So basically I'm just creating a section element, and I'm going to take everything. Oops, I almost did the H1. I don't want that. The H2, our mission, down to the bottom of UL. And I'm going to cut that stuff and put it into the section here, so it's nested inside of there. And then the same thing for the H1 and the figures follow. We'll make another section for those guys. Now, once we get this done, our very first job is to go back to the browser and take a look and make sure this doesn't break anything. Like if I did something like main and then selected for the H2 that's directly inside the main, then this could break that. I don't think there's nothing like that in here, but you always have to check.
When you say section on this right here, can you give that a specific name? Say if I said section H1 or section H2 or section body or section something like that?
You can ID anything, Matt.
So you're talking about giving this a name like ID equals, mission or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, just to identify that's a specific section, just in case in the CSS I wanted to call that one section, give some sort of formatting to that.
Yes, absolutely. You can give these IDs, and then you can use the hashtag, selector in CSS in order to target this. But I'm going to show you a way that you can do the same thing without doing this.
Sneaky, sneaky. Okay, awesome.
Cool. So, okay, let me get the H1 and the figures into the second section here. And there we go. So now we've got this in other sections, and let me go to the browser. Just make sure. I don't think anything is broken here. Yeah, it doesn't break anything. You always want to check, just for fun. Anytime you start messing with your HTML structure and you've already done some CSS, just go check it. In fact, I should be more thorough about checking it right here, except that I really don't think we broke anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and get these guys next to each other. So we already know how to do that. We've been doing display flex on these guys, right? We did display flex on the nav, and that's what enabled us to get those anchors to go next to each other when we did a flex direction row and so on. So the element that's holding those two sections is our main element. So let's do display flex. And who's expecting a train wreck when we go to the browser? I am. Let's go over here, and it's not as bad as the other train wreck we got. But yeah, it's putting them next to each other like this. And the element that's first and has the most text in it, this is really what's driving it, is this paragraph and to some extent this too. That's what's making this one take up all the space, and this one's getting crowded around into the back end over here. Now, before we do anything, I think that I want to change the ordering of this. I think I want to take this guy and put it over on the left side, and then our mission put it over on the right side.
Can
Yes,
you go back to code right quick? Okay. Close and then main. Okay. Body close. Main. I was missing that part. Thank you very much.
Of course. So in order to get this to go before the other one, we already know how to do that. We can give it an order -2 or -1 or minus anything for that matter. But how do we select for it? So this is what we were just talking about. So I've got a section and I've got another section, and I haven't put IDs on that. And let's say we're not allowed to touch the markup for our team. They've handed it to us and we can't do anything with this. How do I select for that second one? Well, with a pseudo selector, it's going to start with the name of the element itself, and then a colon. We've seen this before when we did a link and a visited and a hover and so on. Let's try this one. Section last of type, which says grab the last section within its parent. There is also last child, and this is one that actually you probably will see more often, but that one you have to be careful of. In that case, the section has to be actually the last element inside main, which in this case it is, so you can do both of those. Either way, last child or last of type, both of them will work in this case. And let's go ahead and do order -1. And save it and go over here, and it's changed the ordering on those. So as you might expect, there is also a first of type, and actually you see that one more often. But let's see, what if we had what if we had some unknown number of sections? What if we had 5 or 6 sections, and it could be variable, but we always want to get the second one, not necessarily the last one. So you can actually do an nth of type, nth of type, and then 2, and that'll work the same way. It'll always grab the second one instead of the last one. So that also exists, but in this case, let's keep it a little simpler. Master type.
This stuff's jacked up more like a Ford pickup truck than. So I got guest speakers. I have one of them on the left, and the other 2 are on the right.
Then I'm expecting that you probably did not include all of them within that second big section. I bet there's a figure that got left behind down here.
Okay, figure.
Are they all nested inside the second section, just like this?
1, 2. I think I put the section. So I think I cut the section in half from my H1 at the top. Now they're all on the right.
That would be my guess. But you just have to get all of those elements into section. Then they should stay together.
Once again, I'm driving a Ford pickup. Okay. Figure H3 October. Okay.
Let me know if that doesn't fix it.
For the figure section, do we get the H1 as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so everything here in the main is either in the first section or the second section. Everything's included into one of those two sections.
The only thing you're leaving out is the footer.
Oh yeah, the footers, I don't have, my footer's not inside main though. So everything that's
Right.
inside main is in one of those two sections.
All right. Do you mind if I share right quick, just to can see what I'm
Yeah.
not seeing here?
Let me just pause the
Thank you.
recording. Okay, started the recording. Thank you for reminding me. So yeah, got the one section here and then got the other one downstairs here. And then we've got, am I still looking at over here? Yes. So yeah, I got the order on these right now, but now I just want to get these like so that they're actually readable. So there's one thing that we know we can do. We can add a margin right over to like this element to push this one a little bit away.
Mr.
from
Bisco,
this.
you're not sharing your screen.
I'm not showing my screen. Thank you. I remembered to record and then forgot the rest. And I was all happy with myself too. All right, there we go. So yeah, I'm going to put a margin right on this guy and push this away from it. It's just an M or two, something like that, just to make it not quite touching each other. And I just have to remember that I've changed the order of these with the CSS, but I'm not going to be using first of type in order to grab that one on the left. That's still the last of type. It's still the same element. And let's prove it right now. Let's do a color red on that. And if I save that and go over here, you see this is the one turning red, even though we're still using the last of type. So changing the order of things in CSS doesn't change the order of the content flow in HTML, and it doesn't change the selectors that we would use. So in order to put a margin right on that other one here, we're still going to use that last of type, this one, even though it's now on the left. So let's do a margin right on here. And I don't know, let's try 1M and see if it works. Yeah, it'll probably be a little bit bigger than that. I'll try 2Ms. I'm not going to go as high as 3Ms. I've got 3Ms for the margins on the outside of this. And you almost always want your inner spacing to be smaller than your outer spacing. So the gutters, don't let them get quite as wide as your margins are around the outside, design-wise. But this is still just way too cramped over here. So Flexbox. We did this up here with the nav A somewhere or another, where we did flex 1. I guess actually it would have been the first media query here. Yeah, flex 1. So remember I was saying that this is a shorthand for flex grow and flex shrink and flex basis. So basically flex grow and flex shrink, they're a little bit weird to get a handle on. It's not telling them that they should grow or shrink. It's giving them permission to, if that makes sense. So like if you have room to grow, then you're allowed to grow X amount or X units. And if you have, if you can shrink, then you're allowed to shrink by X number of units. And that's all that does. The flex basis, think of it as the width. If you're using rows, which we are right now, then flex basis is the width. So let's go ahead and just do shorthand on these as well. I'm going to need a section first of type as well. Section colon first type, or again, you could do first child. That would work as well. Both of these would work in this situation. And let's put a flex property on both of these. So I'll put a flex property on that one, and then also on the last of type, which is now on the left. And let's just give them general proportions. Think of this as like a fraction or something like that. Where if I say, okay, I want the I want the one on the right to be like 2/3 and the one on the left to be 1/3, then I would go like 2 there and 1 there. And between the two, they kind of add up to 3. Just be aware that this is not an exact thing. They won't be exactly 33.33% and 6.67%. They are going to, I mean, the whole idea behind flex is that it's flexible, right? There will be minute changes one way or the other, sometimes noticeable ones. But if I go over here and save and refresh over here, then it roughly at least splits this up into 1/3 and 2/3. If I decide this is too much over here, which I don't think it is, by the way, but if you could do 1 and 3 instead and get this to take up roughly 1/4 of the width, right? Which I think that's too small for this. I think we want 1 and 2. So that's the easiest way to get something like that done. You could also do it with flex basis. You could do flex basis 33% and 67%. That would do the same thing pretty much, except it might be a little bit more exact. But I think this is kind of the easiest, easy peasy way to get a basic layout in there, as long as you understand that it's going to be a little bit flexible.
So why don't you just do flex 66 and 33?
You should have pretty much the same effect by doing this.
Well, sorry, I did 66% and 33%.
Well, yeah, if you put percentages on, then it's no longer taking that as flex grow, but as flex basis. And you, again, will get about the same thing there. I just think this is easier. But yes, absolutely, either one will work. Any of those 3 methods will work. 2 and 1. Yeah.
So literally, you could use 6-2 if you wanted to, or 12-4 or anything like that.
Yes, you could.
Okay.
It's basically, it's kind of dividing this into roughly 3 sections and saying that the first one is allowed to grow into 2 of those, and the second one is not. It's supposed to stay in its own place there. So this is why we were able to use this flex 1 as a shorthand for the nav A and get them all to occupy about the same amount of space. But notice these aren't going to be exactly the same amount of space either. They might get wider or narrower depending on what, how much text is in each one. That might not be super obvious because we don't have any really short or long words here, but it will be flexible a little bit. It will be allowed to grow and shrink depending on what the content is. Let's do another one. Let's do another media query. So this one will be desktop. We're going to do @media. Screen and. Okay, slow down this way. Min, width. And we just did 900, so let's do 1200. PX. I always want to leave the PX off, but you kind of have to put that in there. I think it'll, if you don't put it in there, I think it'll start measuring it as M's, if I'm not mistaken. So what I want to do in this next media query is I want to do what we were doing for this one, except let's take it a step further here. For wide screens, let's make it so that the navigation drops down on the left here and goes vertical again. And then when that happens, we probably will want to switch these 2 back around so that we've got kind of like a sidebar here with the nav and another kind of sort of sidebar here with this information, and then the main content in the middle. I think that makes sense. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. So, excuse me. What we have to do now in order to plan for this stuff is we have to take a look at the markup. Like what is it we're trying to move around, and what's the parent that holds them all, right? And then we can start figuring out, okay, so we need to put display flex on this element here in order to get these guys to do whatever. So what I'm doing is I want the nav and the main to be next to each other now, right? I'm taking the nav and putting it over here, and then the main element will go next to that. So that means that the parent element of both of those needs to have a display flex. So there's the nav and the main. What's the body is the element that contains both of those, right? That's the nearest parent. Does the body already have a display flex on it? Does anybody recall?
It does.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, if you recall, we had to put a display flex on this because the first thing that we did with it, I think, was to change the order of these in order to throw the nav
Yeah,
downstairs
you're
here.
right.
And in
Yeah,
order,
we did the column.
yeah, that's right. We did the flex direction column, and then we were able to change the order of these guys in order to throw them downstairs. That's why we put the display flex on body. So we don't need to do that again. It's already on there. Remember, you only need to put stuff in the media queries that specifically needs to override stuff that you've already done before. Otherwise, you can just kind of ignore it. The stuff that was in place or in effect for the narrow widths is also going to remain in effect for the wider widths unless we override it. So I'm going to have to do something with the body selector though. Let's see, that won't work. Let's try that again. There we go. Because right now, as someone was just mentioning, we've got a flex direction column on this. And in order to get nav and main to go next to each other, we've got to do a flex direction row, which should once again completely destroy our page. That's what I'm expecting. Let's try it here. So I'm going to do flex direction row and go over here and yeah, smashed it to pieces, right? Now, if you left it here and gave it to your client, you'd never get hired again. There's so much stuff next to each other, it's not even able to center the page anymore. See how the wider margin here and the narrower margin over here? This is a disaster. So let's get it fixed. The first thing that what we want to do is make it so that the header and the footer get their width back again, because they're both getting frozen, right? These guys, okay, those need to be next to each other, so that's fine. But this guy and this guy, I want them to get their width back. So remember that we have flex basis for that. Flex basis is like width for Flexbox. So if I do, let's see, what is it, header and footer, right? And I will do a flex basis, and let's just do 100%. Wherever it is, where's percent? Ah. Okay, so when I save this and go back over to the browser, it doesn't like that. Let's see, why does it not like that? Header and footer flex basis 100%. The body does have blah, blah, blah. And I got the right brackets in there. Did it work for anyone? Because I would totally expect this to work. This one did not work for anyone. Well, what's going wrong here? Let's see. Oh, I know what went wrong. Haha. So there was something I'm forgetting to do here. So by default, the flex box, if you apply it to just an element without doing anything else, the default is to put it into a row and to not allow it to wrap onto multiple rows. So right now, I can tell it to do all kinds of things to the flex basis of header and footer or whatever else I want, but it's still not going to be able to because it's still trying to squish all this into one row. That's what I was forgetting. So up here under body, in addition to flex direction, let's give it a flex wrap. The default is no wrap, which is what it's doing right now. So if we change this to wrap, now that flex basis should work. And it goes over here. There's now the header is stretching back to the way it should be. And all I need to do is go in and make this a compound selector again to get the footer as well. And now the footer is also working. Huzzah! So there we go. Now, just so you know, Flexbox is built with all kinds of shortcuts. And there is a property called Flex Flow that combines both of these. So I do row wrap. So it's a combination of direction and wrap. Put both of those into Flex Flow and it'll still work. Do it however you like. All right, who's in trouble? Anybody?
I haven't had time to respond. Hell yeah. Flex flow row wrap. flex flow row wrap row.
So the only problem I've been coming across is in my preview window, the section that has the actual content doesn't seem to be expanding when I expand the preview. Although the layout does change when I stretch it.
So what's happening differently from mine?
Well, I'm using the live preview to keep a track on all the changes as I type it out. I don't have it on a separate page like you do.
Oh yeah, I would, if something's not working, I would go ahead and try it in a browser. There are some things that the code preview is not going to display properly.
You can use the there's a Microsoft Edge tools for VS Code
Oh,
tool that you can download through Visual Studio, and that'll give you essentially the web preview that he has with a selector where you can select between probably 50 or 75 different mobile devices, different types of computers and iPads and yada, 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 as well as still giving you a preview. You just have to hit the restart button every time you save and make changes.
and that's all right within code, huh? Sweet.
Yeah.
Nice. Matt, do you want me to pause the recording and have you show me your screen?
No, I'm good. I figured it out. My drink was empty.
What about you, Mr. Godfrey?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and pop it in so I can kind of show you what's going on.
Okay, let me pause here. Get the recording started here again.
It also has a measurement tool in the toolbar that tells you exactly what pixels for width and height that you're running at.
Cool. Sounds like it's basically just running the excuse me, the Edge browser with its little progressive responsive design toolbar in there as well. So
yeah,
cool. Okay, what did we just do? Okay, we just did flex flow, row wrap. And here's what we've got. So I just need to get the navigation put next to these other guys, change the order, and then get the nav to be vertical again instead of horizontal. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. So we've got the body, flex flow, no wrap, and we're going to go ahead and give a flex basis to, or go ahead and use the flex shorthand that we've been using, like flex 1 and flex 2 up here. We'll do the same thing down here. I'll go ahead and give main like a flex, I don't know, let's try 3 and 2 and see what happens. So main flex 3 and then nav flex 2. And I think that's probably too wide for the nav, although it may be being pushed out by the text here. I bet like, well, I guess 3 and 1 would be the next thing to try, wouldn't it? Yeah, I don't know. We'll start with that. It's probably going to want to be narrower than that. But before we get a good sense of it, we'll have to go ahead and change this around so that it's vertical, and then change the ordering of these guys. So remember, we did the order. Let's do the ordering first here. So we did the ordering first by taking the section last of type and giving it an order of -1. And all we have to do is set it back to the default to get those to switch back again. Well, no, actually, that's not all we have to do. Let's see, what's that? The section, yeah, section last of type. And by the way, if yours ever does not work, chances are you did what I tried to just do and put a space in there, in which case it will not work. It'll read this as 2 different selectors then. And let's just do an order 0 to get it back to the default. So that pushes this back over here. The reason why I said that this is not all that we're able to do is, or not all that we have to do, is because we've still got a margin right on this guy, which is not doing us any good anymore. We need to make it a margin left instead. So let's go ahead and do margin right is what we had before, so we can set that back to 0, and then let's do a margin left of 2m instead. And there it is. Okay, now it's getting pushed next to each other with a bit of a margin this time.
Take a quick breather right quick, would you?
Sorry?
Just take a quick breather right there.
Okay.
Learn how to type faster. Just kidding.
Never could type fast without making a million errors.
Say what? I'm sorry? I didn't hear the last part.
I never could type fast without making a million errors.
No, I type pretty fast. I think I average 85 words a minute, or give or take 100 words a minute, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I can do that if I don't mind about the errors.
Very little errors.
If I want no errors, then I probably have to get down to about 70 or so. And I've been typing for, gosh, 35 years, more than that. 35 or 40 years I've been typing. It's one of those things I'm just never going to get better at.
Yeah.
Resume the class.
All right, so just in case you guys remember, if I wanted to do this as one line of code instead of margin right and margin left, then we could just use the margin property, right? If you remember your top right, bottom left ordering, and you could just put those in as 4 values. You put 0 top, 0 right now to override what we had before, 0 bottom, and 2m. That's assuming we don't actually have a margin somewhere else that we need, right? Which I don't think we do in this case. So yeah, it'll work out to be the same thing. Either which way. So let's fix that navigation. So let's see, I've already got the selector up here. Let's go ahead and use this. And let's see, I guess we're doing a flexbox. I'll go ahead and put it underneath here. We're going to do flex direction. And switch it to column, because it was row before, right? That's what's making those guys show up next to each other. Switch flex direction to column, then it does this instead. Notice that as it is wont to do, it stretches the whole thing, the whole way there. Now there's something we can do to fix that, but let's check that, make sure that we've got this working first. Okay, so why are they stretching this whole distance here? Well, remember back in the day, all the way up here somewhere, we had nav A and we did a flex 1. Remember that is the shorthand for grow and shrink as much as you can or want to, and then set your flex basis to auto or 0 really. Take up as much space as you can. So let's say we go to now, let's see, is this going to work? Let's try it here. I think we do nav A and do flex 0. I think we'll override that. And yes, there we go. So flex 0, flex 1 is basically what makes them flexy, more or less, and has them all take up roughly equal space. And flex 0 kind of overrides that and gets rid of that flexiness again. And so then we just have to, I don't know, make it look a little bit better here, override some other stuff. Let's go ahead and make this, let's put it up here. Text align left instead of center. And there we go. And then we need to put some more, some other padding on there. So padding, I don't know. Let's just try 2M, see how that looks. Oh no, wait, that's way too much, isn't it? Let's just try, let's see, what do we want here? We want more left and right, so a 2M and then 0.5M up and down, which is going to be the first property. So 0.5M and 2M. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not wild about it either way, but that'll work for now. And the last thing I'm going to do here is, I don't know if you can see, but we still got that border left on these guys here. So nav A plus A has a border left, and it's just visible over there. It would just be enough to bug me. And so I want to get that back upstairs the way it was when we started it. So we will do a selector for nav A plus A. So remember, that's going to grab every anchor that's preceded by another anchor inside of nav. And let's do, let's see, border left, none. So that gets rid of the border on the left. And then border top, 1px solid. And it gets it back up there. I thought I used a different color for that.
It was like Gainsborough, I think.
Yeah, it
Or
was,
was it, no, it was that purple, wasn't it?
maybe it was a
RGB.
light purple.
Light purple? Yeah, right
Yeah.
there.
So here's the reason why I specified here in border left, so it's not going to remember that when I do a border top. So let me just go ahead and do that down here. So border top, 1px solid, and then the RGB, and it's that guy. No, wait, it's this guy. There we go. So I'm not wild about it, but it's starting to look a little bit more like a desktop web page.
Oh, it's right there.
So here's where we stand here. Here's our mobile view with right now our navigation tucked down at the bottom. And then we've got kind of a tablet view where we've got the nav up top there, horizontal, nothing else changed. Maybe a tablet landscape here where, or a desktop rather, where, no, I guess this is tablet landscape. So you still got everything the same, except we've got a couple of columns here within main. And then our desktop view at 1200 and above, where we've got the navigation running down the left-hand side because we've got plenty of room for it, and the user has to scroll less to get to the content. Now, there's probably all kinds of stuff that we should be doing up in the header, and I kind of built things so that the logo just sits right above the text, and so we don't really have to, we can just kind of ignore it the whole time for now. And it all kind of works until we get down here, and this breaks onto 2 lines, which is not happy. But other than that, yeah, it's not a great solution, but it does work. But when I start getting wide like this, I start to notice, like, this is like too much space here. And I could try to fix it by putting a background gradient or something like this, but probably I would want to take the text here and center it. And then probably would want to change the size of the logo for different widths as well. Smaller logo here, and then a larger and larger logo as we get wider. A trick that I've done in the past for some sites is when we're on the home page, it shows this whole bit like this, but then when we get to an interior page, start drilling down on the site, then the only thing that shows up is the logo. And you don't actually need this because you already know what website you're on. That's a little bit dangerous, but I think it can be kind of cool sometimes. One of the many things we're probably not going to get to. So we actually burned through that pretty quick. It's only 7:20 here. Did anybody run into trouble that they would like fixed before we go on a break, or that wants to show me that?
Hey, Mr. Briscoe, quick question. I have my border for the nav A plus A. Have it on top of the left. Does it matter the order?
Does
for
not
things?
matter. No, the only time the order matters in CSS is if you have a conflict, and one of them is going to be overriding the other one. And in this case, they don't override each other. They're different properties.
Okay.
So if I had a border top and then said something and then another border top and said something else, the second one is the one that would take effect. It would override the first one. But otherwise, it's not going to matter.
So it does seem a little bit odd to me that we're wasting a lot of space after home or after the left side navigation. How would we make that to where that side would be dynamically increased based on the length of the text within those flex boxes?
Are you talking about the length of the element?
Yeah,
vertically or
right
horizontally?
where your cursor is. Yeah, so on the right side of those menu items, home speaker, lunch and ticket, about us, I would personally like to have the same type of padding that's on the left
Mm-hmm.
be on the Mac side of the right.
I believe that the simple solution to that is simply to take off what we did with Flex 3 and Flex 1. So if I remove both of those, then I would expect the main to expand to take up as much space as it could. And no, it didn't work, did it?
You get what I'm saying, or what?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I actually thought that would work, but it does not. I don't know. Let me think about that over the break. That's a good question. Oh, I still had Flex 1 on there. Get rid of that and Flex 1. But now that I've seen the other problem, I don't think that's actually going to work now. Well, it kind of does, except that this gets pushed down to the next line. So let's see, how do I get this to work and get this to go next to it? I think that if I put a flex shrink on the main.
Is this the part of the chapter or is just an example?
This is an example of answering a question or
Okay.
attempting to. So, no, those are my best guesses, and it's not quite working. So I don't know. Let me think about that for a bit. That's a good question. I was really hoping this would work, actually. Well, let's see. What happens if we... This isn't going to work. Nope. All right. I don't know. I'll think about it. Okay, good questions, folks. Let's go ahead and take a break. I'll get this recording crunching. And then when we come back, I think we'll be able to do a little bit of Thursday's stuff and get a little bit ahead, which is cool. Because the more time we have for JavaScript, the better. So let me get this stopped.